This is Horror Podcast.
Welcome to This is Horror, a podcast for readers, writers, and creators. I'm Michael David Wilson, and every episode alongside my co-host Bob Pastorella, we chat with the world's best writers about writing, life lessons, creativity, and much more. Today we are talking to Ross Jeffery for the first in a two-part conversation. Ross Jeffery is the Bram Stoker Award-nominated author of a variety of books, including Tome, Juniper, Only the Stains Remain, and Tethered. Although this conversation focuses less on the books and more on Ross's early life and the nuts and bolts of writing. So if you're looking for writing lessons and takeaways and looking at how you might be inspired and you might be able to improve your own writing, this is the episode for you. And it personally left me feeling really invigorated and energized to write, and I love it when that happens. So I can't wait for all of you to hear this one, but before we get into it, a quick advert break.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio. From the host of This is Horror Podcast comes a dark thriller of obsession, paranoia, and voyeurism. After relocating to a small coastal town, Brian discovers a hole that gazes into his neighbor's bedroom. Every night she dances and he peeps. Same song, same time, same wild and mesmerizing dance. But soon Brian suspects he's not the only one watching, and she's not the only one being watched. They're watching is The Wicker Man meets Body Double with a splash of Suspiria. They're Watching by Michael David Wilson and Bob Pastorella is available from thisishorror.co.uk, Amazon, and wherever good books are sold.
Okay, here it is. It is Ross Jeffery on This is Horror. Ross, welcome to This is Horror.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and goodness, you've written so many amazing books that the most difficult part about this conversation will be kind of where to even go with this journey. But in terms of the starting point, we're starting where we always do. I want to know, what were some of the early life lessons that you learned growing up?
Well, some of the early life lessons from my dear father were to work very hard. If someone hit you, you hit them back harder. Lots of toxic masculinity going on in my household when I was younger. But I think one of the things I learned it the hard way, is that writing and reading didn't really come easy for me in my kind of early childhood. And I would kind of like, as a lesson, like if anyone is listening to this and finds it difficult to write or read or, find pleasure in books, is that you can persevere past that and you can discover the love for it that I have. like when I was at school, like I always found it so challenging. Like I think I'm undiagnosed kind of dyslexic because when I was at school, they didn't bother checking. They just let you just struggle. So it's always been something. And then I always thought I was lazy because I didn't quite understand grammar and spelling and all that kind of stuff. And then I got to secondary school, struggled all the way through it. And then I had an English teacher that put me off reading like forever, like for a really, really long time. And it was all because I don't know if they do it in America, Bob, but like in England, when you're doing your GCSEs, they make you read aloud in the class, and everybody does it like a little bit of it, and it goes around. And I absolutely hated it because whenever I talk when I'm reading or reading out loud, like I stutter and I stumble over words. And every time I did it, my teacher was just like, right, you need to start again. And I was like, and then I'd try and read again and I'd get worse and worse and worse. And then the teacher was just like, oh, just move on to the next person. And then I just gave up reading, and I didn't read for play. Like I read comics. Comics were my happy place. But like books just didn't interest me at all. And I just, if I didn't read for pleasure until I got married in like 2007. So like the whole time I was just like not reading books at all. And then my wife was like, I never see you reading. And I was like, nah, I don't really want to read. I'm not finding anything interesting to read. And she was like, you need to find one book. And if you find that one book, it will just unlock everything. And I believe there is a book out there for everybody who doesn't like reading. There is a book that will turn you on, let's say. And yeah, my book was that I read that made me fall in love with reading again was James Fry's A Million Little Pieces. Which just blew my mind when I read it because it's all written in like, I don't know if you guys have read it. Have you read it?
I have not read it, no.
It's like, obviously there was a whole Oprah issue around it because like when he wrote it, his publisher said to him, it was a fiction book. And then his publisher said, oh, this would work really well as a memoir. And he was like, okay, like if I just wrote a book, but if you want to classify it as a memoir, and then he got in trouble for Oprah because it was a memoir and stuff in it didn't really happen. But the book was written in such a like different way, like it unlocked in my mind, like just, oh, actually you can write and make it look how you want it. Like it's really short sentences, like one word on a line, and then the next line's got like three and then back to one word. And I was just like, oh wow, you can have fun with writing. I didn't know that was like a thing. But yeah, like that was amazing. And like he's blurbed a book for me now, and I'm just like, that's like mind blowing. But yeah, the kind of lessons. I never had a filter either, so like I was like diving into loads of horror very young, like horror films. So not having a filter is quite good. Although my children have a filter because it's damaging. But yeah, there's some of the lessons. I know how to bricklay as well, but that's a story for another day.
Well, I mean, these are long podcasts, so it might be a story that we get back to. But as this is not the This Is Bricklaying podcast, we'll put that on hold for now. I wonder, with the James Thre book, A Million Little Pieces, you said that was the one that really unlocked it for you. What made you pick up that specific book, and were there a number of books beforehand that had been false starts? So did you kind of luck out with your first attempt in 2007 to get back on the reading train?
It was recommended to me by my wife. So she was a heavy reader, and she was just like, I think knowing kind of what I was like, because I'd been dabbling in writing before then, and like I used to write quite a lot of really, like, my stuff's dark, but like before I used to write really dark stuff and it was just short stories. But I wrote them to offend people because I thought offending people was cool. Turns out it's not so. But I used to write some really dark stuff just to like, I used to write really grisly things that I was just like, yeah, that's going to make people feel really sick. That's really cool. And my wife had read those and she was just like, you've got a real talent, but she's like, some of this stuff I'm just like not checking in with. And then she was just like, look, read this book. I think this book would be good for you. Like, because it's about like a guy who goes to, like, he's an addict, goes to a drug facility to kind of detox. And it's kind of like the stories that he has there, the people that he meets. It's kind of like more of a kind of like recovery story that's almost a little bit like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but kind of separate. And then he like meets his friends there. Like there's a guy called Leonard, and then the second book James Thre wrote was called My Friend Leonard. So then I read that afterwards as well. There were a couple of books I tried to read. Like I thought if I wanted to read, I should probably read some classics. So I attempted Dracula. I found it really boring. And then I have gone back and read that since though, and it was better than I first thought it was. And Portrait of Dorian Gray. I kind of read that and thought it was okay, but I still didn't have the bug. I was just like, nah. And then I read a Shirley Jackson book as well, but I can't remember which one it was. What's the one about the poison? I can't remember what that one's called.
We've Always Lived in a Castle.
Yes, that one. So I started reading that one, but I think I started and stopped that one about 3 or 4 times. And then I discovered James Thre, and I was like, oh. And then soon after him, I then discovered Chuck Palahniuk, who's a friend of the show, I don't know. And he blew my mind as well. And I was just like, right, this is kind of the stuff I want to read. Like, and then just kind of just carried on reading. Like when I was really little, well, I say really little, when I was about 11, I read Stephen King's It, but it took me like forever to read it. And then I went to secondary school, and then she ruined reading for me. But yeah, so then, yeah, James Thre got me into it again. And then, yeah, Chuck Palahniuk. And then lots of like Richard Thomas. And then I kind of like just started kind of just because I love horror. Like I'm such a fan of it that I was just like, and I was like picking up like authors that I'd not heard of, like quite a lot of indie stuff, but I didn't know what indie was then. I was just like, oh, this person's got a good book, let me pick that one up. And then just the kind of love affair with books carried on, and now I just can't stop reading, which is the like I've turned a corner. Like I just read everything now, and like I love supporting writers and recommending books to like my colleagues at work and stuff like that. So yeah, it's great. Like, I love it.
So this is such a non-linear and unconventional journey, and so there's so many points on that journey that I want to touch on. But something that I find quite interesting is, so as a child, you were not a big reader at all, but for some reason you decided to read It by Stephen King. So one of the biggest, kind of meatiest tomes that you could find. So, I mean, where on earth did that come from? You had Carrie a few books down as a much slimmer volume. Why did you go from not reading anything to picking up the biggest book in the store?
Because I grew up in a house, like my dad is a voracious reader, like he reads like everything. And when I was growing up, we had this like big cabinet in our lounge. It was quite a huge thing. And it had those like, the VHSs that look like books. So it was kind of like that, like all the way across one level. And then below that was my dad's kind of hardback collection. And so my mum used to buy him the hardback first edition Stephen King every time it came out. So he had them all, and they're all lined up, like all the old cool first edition UK covers and stuff like that. And I was just like, and then he had those. He had The Exorcist first editions, like every kind of like horror, like Sean Hudson, like he loved him. He had all these books as well. And then like James Herbert, like I learned kind of just by looking at these covers and then their names, like just on the spines, I was just like, enamored with it, and I was just like, oh, what's this? And I'd pull the covers out, and the one that used to scare the shit out of me was the old Misery cover, because it had her like kind of screaming on the cover, and then The Shining as well. But the It one was the kind of the UK cover's got the kind of house on the cover, and it's like bent and the clown, and it just intrigued me, and I was just like, oh, that's quite cool. And then when I read the back bit, I was just like, oh yeah, this sounds like my cup of tea. Because by that point I'd already like watched The Exorcist and stuff, so I kind of like had piqued my kind of interest in horror. So I was just like, oh, let's give this a go. And it literally it must have taken me like a year to read it, because I wasn't the fastest reader, and also at that point I still kind of didn't really love reading. I was just I think I was reading it just to get through it and like complete a book. But yeah, like some of the stuff that happened in that like has stayed with me a long time. And I reread it recently as well. I think it was around the time the films were coming out, so I thought I'll go back and reread it. And I when I was reading it, I could still remember myself like laying on my floor in my bedroom, like with the book laid out in front of me. Like it just had like pure nostalgia for me, like going back and reading it. But yeah, I think before that, like the only kind of book I'd read was like a picture book called Not Now Bernard. So it was a big step up. But yeah, it's great. Like and then the crazy thing about this story as well is that when I went to university to study film, and I went to university and then finished university, met my wife, got married, and then I said to my dad, "Oh, have you still got your Stephen King books? Can I have them if you're not gonna?" And he was like, "No, I got rid of them." And I was like, "What? All the first editions you had?" And he was like, "Yeah." He said, "I took them down to the charity shop. They seemed very happy about it." I was just like, "What are you doing?" And he just got rid. He got rid of all of his first editions, like Exorcist, like all the James Herberts, like every single first edition hardback. He got rid of, and I was just absolutely devastated. And I was like, "What?" And so now I've had to, like, just trawl the internet and try and find them all again. Not his ones, obviously, but like just have to buy them all. So I've got them all, and now I have. But it's just, I was just like, "You just cost me loads of money, Dad. Like, what's going on?" But yeah, so because he got a Kindle, he thought it was cool to like then just buy all the books he had already on a Kindle, and I was just like, "What are you playing at?" He's trying to be cool, he's trying to be hip, trying to be down with the kids, and I was just like, "Dad, you've just got rid of a lot of good books."
I mean, it's absolutely fine to read books on Kindle and then to have the physical artifact in, you don't have to choose. It's not like when you get the Kindle, there's terms and conditions, although maybe there are, because everyone clicks accept and we don't read. And it's like, right, you've now got to get rid of your physical books. But, oh my goodness, all that money. He might as well have taken a wheelbarrow of money to a bonfire, because that's what happened.
This is true.
Yeah, I've lost books that were like I considered collector's items, and and I bought them when they were new, and so they were relatively inexpensive, and I took really good care of them, and I lost them in a storm. We had a terrible hurricane. And they got water damaged, and so it's like you just basically throw them away. And so it's like I've slowly been picking them up, and spending a lot more fucking money than what I originally spent. It's like I remember. I mean, shit. I think for like all 6 volumes of the Books of Blood.
Oh.
I probably in the original little paperbacks, I probably spent like $25 on them. Okay, I spent $25 on one book. So, but I mean, some good things have came out of that. I've got 3 of the British covers that they accidentally sent, and then one of the books is actually signed, which I didn't.
Oh wow!
We didn't realize they didn't know either. Apparently, they never opened it up. But the guy who I was getting it from, my book dealer, he was like, "This one's signed too." And I'm like, "No shit, really? Wow." And we matched the signature, and yeah, it's pretty much spot on. So I got that for like $15, and I was like, average price for that book was probably about $75. Long story short, your dad, like, what the fuck, man? Like, damn.
And then it's quite funny because now he messages me like quite often when he's in a charity shop, and he's like, "Oh, do you need this hardback?" I was like, "No, I've got it now. I've rebought it again."
There's another side to the story, and maybe in the future we will get the guest on the show, but there's somebody who they walked into a charity shop and they're like, "There's loads of first edition Stephen Kings and they're like £1." So, this is your tragedy, but I guess like somebody's tragedy is another person's joy, and that's what's going on here. But I mean, you were saying before, so as I weave together this puzzle of your writing and creative career, so even though you weren't reading a lot, you were still writing pieces. You were writing pieces primarily to offend people, which I think at that kind of like late teenage, early 20s age, a lot of us have done, because we're pushing boundaries. We're seeing like, what can we do? And we're any reaction at that point is a good reaction. Later, we're like, we have to be maybe a bit more discerning as to the type of reaction we want. But were you at that point interested in kind of pursuing a creative career? Was studying film at university to go into filmmaking or screenwriting? What do the levels look like in terms of you arriving at becoming a writer?
So I've always loved, even though I didn't love reading, I've always loved telling stories. And that was like, as a kid, like my dad worked a lot, my mum worked a lot, and I was kind of like, and my sister just kind of put up with me. So then like I kind of spent a lot of time by myself. So I used to like just play with my toys like loads, and I just set up like really long games that I'd play like the whole day long and stuff like that. And they were really kind of in depth, and like, I just used to play for hours on end. And then when I was at secondary school, I started doing media studies, and like I just like part of growing up, I used to watch westerns like all the time with my dad. Like on a weekend, that was kind of like what we did. Like we'd sit down, put a western on, watch it, and then when I went to secondary school, they did media studies later on. So I started doing that, and like one of the first kind of films that we studied was The Magnificent Seven, which I'd watched like about 500 times by then. I was like, oh yes, I know loads about this, and then it was just kind of like learning about kind of like films and the big five, and like how it all, like the whole kind of film industry, which I loved, because I was I'm a bit of a film nerd. I've kind of like taken the books now and like left the film, but like for many years I was a massive film nerd, and like I just used to love it. And then I thought, oh, actually I could, because I love creating stuff and I love like visually, I love kind of like picking things apart and things like that. So I was like, oh, actually I could do some of this. And like in our media studies class, like we had to make like little short films and like move the camera from one end of the room to the other, and like use all these different like crossfades and cuts and things, and try and make it as interesting as possible. So we did all of that, loved it, and then we got to do like script writing as well in it. So then I started doing script writing, and then towards the end of my A levels, I was just like, I don't really know what I want to do at university. I love film. I love watching films. So I went to university to do media arts and video production at Thames Valley University, which is next to Ealing Studios. So I went there and did media arts as my kind of major and video production as my minor, and then just made films for 3 years. Just absolutely loved it. learned kind of all the ins and outs of like how to edit, cut film, all that kind of stuff. And then, unfortunately, by the time we finished university, most of what we'd learned was rubbish because Danny Boyle had released 28 Days Later using digital camera, and then the whole world changed and no one really used film anymore. So that was fun. And then, I did a little bit afterwards. Like, me and a couple of friends set up like a little production company. Like, we just did a couple of like small shorts and independently funded stuff. And then kind of it was a really hard industry to get into. Like, I did a few runner jobs, and kind of I was just like, I can't do this. Like, it was just like, I can't work for free living in London. And then I kind of just stopped that kind of like film side of it. I did it as a little bit like kind of like making films as just for fun. But then I carried on because I loved the kind of script writing side of stuff. I was just like, oh, actually, let me try some short stories. And then I just thought, let's offend people. And then like, I just used to just write little short stories. And at that point, I didn't know much about kind of the writing world. So I didn't know you could submit short stories to places. And I just kept them all as kind of like, and then I'd give them to friends and they'd read them. And then we'd just discuss them. And then a couple of them we turned into like little shorts, like film wise. But yeah, and that was something I just kept doing for years, just writing little short stories. And then set up a Storgy magazine with two of my other friends. So we set that up, or they set it up, and then I joined it. And then we used to kind of do a little bit where so the three of us would just randomly come up with a word like coaster, and then we'd send it to each other, and then each of us would have a week to just write a short story, and that's the title, Coaster. And then we'd all come back and then read our stories to each other, and it'd all be completely different. And that's kind of, I kept that going. We kept that going for years. So we had loads of different like stories, all the same title, but completely different. And then I don't know how far you want me to go in this to writing, but we carried on going. And then I think COVID struck, and then I was working. So I work at a homeless day centre. I manage a homeless day centre in Bristol. And then COVID struck, and I had loads more time on my hand because we could only open a certain amount of hours. So then I thought to myself, let's just try and write something a little bit longer than a short story. And then I wrote the novella Juniper. And then, yeah, that's kind of brings it up to where we are.
And the amount of books that you now have out is incredible to think that your long form fiction started with COVID, essentially.
Yeah. I was writing down my books earlier because I sometimes forget which order they were in. So I was just writing them down, and I was just like, I turned around to my wife and I was like, I've written like 14 books in 5 years. And she was just like, yeah. I was just like, yeah. But yeah, it's crazy. Like, I don't know whether it was all the years that I had just been, because I had loads of sketchbooks with like ideas down in and things like that. Like I love like sketching out ideas and just having them there, and then choose one that comes like rises to the top. I don't know whether it was years of just suppressed kind of like storytelling that's just been in there, but I think when I wrote Juniper, I was just like, oh, I like that. That was quite good. And then I sat as soon as I'd kind of written it. So I'd written that book initially to be published through Storgy, because we were starting to publish some books, and I'd initially said I didn't want them to publish it because I didn't want it to be a vanity press. I was just like, if I'm going to release it, I'd like to kind of see if I can get anybody to, like an independent publisher, to publish it. And they said, look, we're not about vanity, but like, we really like your work. We'd like to publish it, but we want to kind of get an outside view on it to see whether we're just being friends and liking it or not. So I was like, okay, that's fine by me. Yeah, if you want to do that, that's fine. But there's no pressure from me. Like if you decide it's not for you, that's fine. I'll take it elsewhere. And they sent it to a kind of well-known author at the time who was a creative writing lecturer at a university in London. And I know of this person. I've read their work. And sent it off, and I was like, oh, that's quite exciting. Like, they're going to read it, see what it's like. And then I received back I think it was 3-page document telling me how awful it was, how I should put it on the shelf and never pick it up again, that I had no talent, that my grammar and everything else was off. How in anybody's right mind would anybody eat cats? Lots of other kind of like horrible, derogatory stuff that was very, very personal. And I was it brought back all those kind of like inadequacies of when I was younger and like English. And I was just like, oh shit, like this is bad. Like what am I even doing? And then like I spoke to my wife and I said, like, because she'd read it, and I said to her, look, I've just got this back. Like, can you read this email and just let me know, like, if it's right or if I'm wrong? Like, so I don't mind. Like, if it's true, let me know. And she read it and she was like, to me, it just sounds like jealousy. She was like, lots of it is not. It's really personal. It's not about the work. It seems like it's about you. And I was just like, okay. So luckily, I didn't listen to that prick. And I went on and released it myself, and it did quite well. And I still have his email printed out in my desk, so I sometimes pull it out to look at for inspiration, to be like, fuck you. And also, I was like, this guy is in charge of people who have gone to this university to learn how to write. And it seems like he doesn't like any writing that's not like his own. I was just like, you are a very toxic individual. I've never named this person. I will never do that. But I was just like, I can't believe you're in a position of power over quite like, like kids basically who have gone to university to learn how to write, and you're going to basically cripple them before they even start. Luckily, I don't give a shit what people think. So I just went on and did it myself. And then as soon as did that, got that email, released the book, and then I was just like, right, I'm going to write a novel. And then I wrote a Bram Stoker nominated novel, Tome. And I was just like, yeah, sod you. but yeah, that's a long-winded answer to how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, goodness, what happened with that, lecturer at the university? I mean, it is a classic in how not to talk to your students. And just not even to do with students, but just being a kind of good person and just how you frame something. You're allowed to be sent a piece and you don't respond to it. You don't like the topic. Obviously, the whole kind of cat eating thing is going to be a divisive issue. It's kind of funny you even mentioned it for people who haven't read the book. They're like, hang on, what? But that little detail might sell it to them. They're like, okay, what's going on there? But yeah, like, I think even just saying, you know what, I read it, I'm not the audience for this. I think you need to send it to someone to critique who's more into dark fiction and horror. That is a much more reasonable way of approaching things. But sadly, your story, your experience with this professor is not like an uncommon one. It's kind of I've heard versions of this again and again. I've had personal encounters with professors who have tried to steer me away from horror, and it's just this snobbery and this argument that we occasionally talk about on the podcast, where there is a sect of people who kind of denigrate horror and they think of it as lesser. And, Frankenstein, Dracula, Shirley Jackson, this is all horror and literature. These are classics. So, goodness, what an awful experience. But I'm glad and somewhat surprised that you managed to take that and to just kind of continue. And I suppose maybe getting that perspective from your wife was something that contributed to you understanding, okay, this isn't a me problem, this is a him problem.
Yeah, I think it's because I bounce ideas off my wife, and like she's kind of like a first reader for quite a lot of my stuff. She hasn't read the last few books because I keep writing too many for her to read. But like she's read them, and like I think she's read up to Devil's Pocketbook, I think, and then the rest she hasn't read. But like she's always someone that I can kind of like give the book to and be like, can you have a look and read it and let me know what you think? And like horror's not her bag. Like she doesn't read horror. I forced her to read Bird Box and she absolutely loved it. But I was just like, yeah, like I trust her. She's so well read that she can point out if something's not right or not working right, or it's going to like offend people. Because I'm not about offending people anymore. But she'll be able to like be my kind of like voice of reason as well. Like, and there's been a time where I was writing a novel and I thought autosave was on and I was writing, I think it was Scorched, and I was writing for absolutely ages one day, and then thought it was autosaving and didn't save, and I lost like 20,000 words. And I was just like, I was having a meltdown, and she was just like, look, it doesn't matter. Like, you wrote it the first time. She was like, I know it's really bad, but you need to pull yourself together. You've written it once. You kind of know the gist. So when you sit down to write it again, you'll write it better. And then I was just like, okay, I needed to hear that because I just thought I'd lost the whole book. But yeah, like she's great. She's amazing. Yeah, and it's very encouraging. And I also think like maybe that letter and that kind of feedback I had, although it was hard to take at first, and I rubbish it as it's his issue, not mine. But I think it also fueled me on to not that I'm proving myself to him, but I'm proving that I can write, and it's not a fluke, or my kind of slice of horror is a bit different than others. Like, it's a bit wordy. I think people use purple prose, but I just love writing the way I write, and if people like reading it, then I'll carry on. And if they don't, I'll just carry on. But yeah.
Yeah, and coming back to writing 14 books in 5 years, so I want to know, and I'm sure listeners want to know too, I mean, what does a typical routine look like at the moment? And then how many of those 14 books did you write during the COVID period? Because I think that is an important caveat, because kind of different rules applied at that point. So yeah, both COVID and then now what it typically looks like.
So during COVID, so I would finish work at, so I only work 4 days a week. So I do full-time hours in 4 days. So I have a Friday off. And that became my writing day, and that still is now. Even though my work have said, well, we'd like to open on this day, I was just like, I said, I'm really sorry, but my writing has taken off, and that's the day I spend writing, and I do all my hours during the week. And they were like, okay, that's fine. We respect that. We want you to have that. So that's fine. So yeah, so Fridays are my kind of writing day. During COVID, so I'd go to work at 8:00, finish at 12, and then I'd get back home and like do a bit of like homeschooling with the kids, and then I'd write from about 3:00 till 8:00 each night, and then because it was just something to do, and I was just like, that was like ingrained. Every day I'd get back and I'd write. Some nights I'd write like 1,000 words. Some nights I'd write 5. Like it just depended on how it went. So, and then during COVID, I probably wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books during COVID. Like that's like, yeah, over like 2 years, I think. And then the rest just kind of in the time after that, which seems like a lot when I'm looking at it. But yeah, so like kind of my routine is Fridays is my day. Like I protect that. Like I know people have an issue with J.K. Rowling, but she said something that was like, to be a writer, you need to find the time that you want to write. You need to protect it as much as you can. And so Fridays is my day for writing. My kids are at school. My wife works on a Friday, so I'm basically in the house. No other, like people will message me and be like, "Oh, Ross, do you want to come out for a coffee?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm writing." I must seem quite boring to them, but I'm like, "No, I'm writing. It's my day." So yeah, I'd get up, have some breakfast, sit down at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd write until about 3 when my kids came home. And that's been the routine pretty much all the way up till now. There were 2 exceptions. One was The Devil's Pocketbook, because I kind of told someone that I'd written more of it than I had. And they seemed very interested in it for particular reasons, which I can't really talk about. So then I needed to, because they said, how long will it take you to write it, seeing as you've done 30,000 words of it already, and I'd only just had the idea. So I was just like, a typical book normally takes me about 2 months if I'm sitting down and concentrating on it. And they were like, okay. And then they took that date as the date, and I was just like, oh shit. So then like every day I was coming home from work and I'd work all day, and then like I said to my wife, like I said, look, I did a bit of a boo-boo, told someone that I was gonna, like, I'm ahead, I'm not, so I need to sit down. So then every day I was getting home from work, so I'd work all day, get home at like 5, eat, sit with my kids for a little bit, and then I'd go up and like from 6 till 9 every day in the evening I'd be pounding keys, getting it all written, and then I'd have my full day on a Friday to write. And so I did all that, and that was good. And then the other book, which isn't released yet, it's on kind of submission at the minute, is my Western, A Few Vials More, which, because I love Western, as I've said previously, it's always been something I've wanted to write, and I had an amazing idea for it. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do when the time is right. And then a couple of years ago, I was like, yeah, time's right, let's do it. And I decided to use an old-fashioned typewriter to type the whole manuscript. And I just basically every moment I got, I just sat, because I loved the tactileness of it and moving the paper and the ding and the bell and all that. So I was just loving life. Although my wife kept on telling me I looked like Angela Lansbury, because it kept on like, she was like, you just look like you're on like the thing where she throws the paper. I can't remember what it's called. That TV show she did about murder. But I was just like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's a funny joke. And then, but yeah, I would just spend like as much time as I could on it. And I loved it. But generally, all my books are written on a Friday. And again, like, and the kind of development of how I have written them has changed a lot, because I used to just write the whole book from start to finish. I think mainly just to get it out of my head, because it's just too busy sometimes with all the ideas I've got. So I just write all the way through, not worry about spelling errors, just get to the end. And then I think after about 3 books, I was just like, bloody hell, this editing is taking forever. So then I started to do, I think it's called like the Lansdale technique, where you kind of read back the last bit you wrote and you edit it, and then you fresh to go in the next. So I started doing that, and it is an absolute lifesaver. I love it. It always gets me back in the zone as well. So I'm just fresh to write. And yeah, it just makes the manuscript so much easier to work with, like afterwards. Because I was spending, I'd probably say I spent more time re-editing my earlier books than I did writing them, because it was just, I've already said my spelling and punctuation's awful, but like it was just too much. And I was just like, I'd rather spend my time writing than doing this. So I'm just going to make sure I do it right the first time. And I've kind of kept that technique going through the rest of kind of the books from Devil's Pocketbook onwards. And it's, saved me so much time. And also getting a good editor has also saved me so much time.
Okay, so I've taken some notes because there's a lot to kind of get to here, but kind of the quick version seems to be, so you've written about 9 books in the last 3 years, so we'll say about 3 per year. You take about 2 months to write it, 2 months after is editing. However, and this is the bit that's probably going to blow most people's minds, you're primarily only writing on Fridays between 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. And the method that you're kind of now using going forward is what you've termed the Lansdale technique, where you read like a page or a chapter before to orientate yourself, to edit the previous day's work or the previous weeks in your instance. And that's kind of it. That is your way. You're essentially writing on Fridays, and with that discipline, you can finish 3 books every year.
Yeah, it's when you put it like that, it sounds quite weird. But yeah,
I don't know. Weird. It sounds bloody phenomenal and impressive. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's it shocks me sometimes. Like my wife also says, she said, like you never sit down to write, and you never like have writer's block. Like it just doesn't seem to be a thing for you. Like she said, every time I see you, you basically open the laptop and you are straight in there just writing. And I'm just like, it's just my kind of, I think I have a really, like, I think it's from all the films I watched as a kid and like my love of film, that when I'm writing, I visualize, I'm pretty sure everybody does, but like I visualize the whole thing as I'm writing. And I always, when I'm writing, I always kind of, like visual storytelling, but I kind of see the whole scene in front of me. It's quite strange when I think about it, but like I kind of imagine that I'm watching my film of the book, and I'm just writing kind of what I'm seeing on the screen. So
much cinematic.
Yeah. So like some like of my writing kind of like a few people that have read my stuff are like, oh, that bit where it does that, it's just like a cut in a film, and like it's just next scene, and it just like comes out of nowhere. Like, and that's kind of how I see it when I'm writing. It's just the film in my head that I'm putting on the paper, which makes it like I can just sit down and be like, oh yeah, I paused it at that point. Like, let's crack on and like. But yeah, like I'm very fortunate. I haven't ever suffered from writer's block. Like a lot of that is, I do a lot of planning beforehand. So I've got like notebooks that are quite detailed about, so I have like characters, my act structure, scaffolding, kind of like how I want to get to where, sometimes illustrations of characters and things like that. So that helps kind of keep me centered, and I never ever finish writing mid-chapter. I always get to the end of a chapter, like even if I have to write later, or if I'm, it's not 3 o'clock yet, it's like 2 o'clock, but I'm like, if I write another chapter, I won't write, I'll just hold it. But yeah, and I think that just helps fuel it. But it's a lot of books in not a lot of time.
So you don't, when you do your session, and you will actually stop at the end of a chapter, and you will not start the next chapter until the next session.
Yeah, if I don't have time if I think it's going to be a long chapter,
I got you.
I won't start it until I think like I've got enough time to finish it. But I will. Like, I've written some days I'll sit down and I'll write. My general kind of a good day is around 5,000 to 7,000 words. But I've sat down before and written like 25. I think 22 actually was when I was writing with Josh when we did our little write together.
That's like Stephen Graham Jones level. Yeah.
Like I wrote 22K off the bat, and I was just like, oh wow, like I really needed to get that out. But that was just like one day. I just sat down 9 to 3, and I wrote 22K, and I was like, yeah, cool. But then that's like a rarity. Like I don't write that much often in one day. But yeah, I'd say between 5 and 7 is the sweet spot, really. And then and if I have time, like if I finish that and I get that done, I'll start my Lansdale on the kind of same day. Like I'll go back to what I've just written and just kind of scan it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't end it in a chapter, and then go back to the writing session. Even if I Lansdale it, as we're saying, and go back and reread and edit and things like that, then I pull up, and I write in Scrivener now, so I pull up another document basically in my folder and get the parameters set for it and all that, and then I stare at the cursor for a fucking hour because I didn't set myself up, and it's just, I guess everybody's a little different, but I have to set myself up. So if I end a chapter, I have to go into the next chapter. I have to write a sentence, a paragraph, something. And so, and strike while the iron's hot. And so it's like, because a lot of times it's like, okay, I want this chapter to start right here. So I want to put it into the meat of what they're about to do, or a different decision has happened. So, I just find it fascinating that you can end on a chapter and then go right back into it. And it's like, I guess it's just because I've just trained myself to always kind of give myself a hook. That way, when I go back to the next day, I was like, oh, I'm not staring at a blank, a flashing cursor, just, taunting me.
Yeah, the curse of the blank page.
Yes. And it's funny, too, you mentioned about having to write a book and like really, really quick because you kind of bit off more than you can chew. And then we talk about Lansdale. Lansdale did that years ago with the screenplay. And this guy was local, and he had written a book or a story or something like, can you do a script? And Lansdale said, well, yeah, I can do a script, It's like, he goes, I can get it to you pretty damn quick. The guy was at his house the next day, just, hey man, you got that script? And he was like, oh, you need it now. Well, no, give me a little bit. I need a little time. I was like, yeah, you got to be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what, when Ross was talking about it, it brought to mind for me. But, to be honest, ever since hearing that from Lansdale, I do that a little bit myself, because I think, if I'm talking to somebody important and there's a potential opportunity, it's like, look, the book might not be written, but if they want the book to have been written, and this is going to be the difference between me getting a deal or not, the book is written. Oh, well, can you send it? Give me a week to just polish it up.
It's all right.
Let me just give it a read through. So, yeah, I mean, goodness, we've got to advocate for ourselves. We've got to create these opportunities. And, I think, like yourself, that's why I don't really have writer's block in the traditional sense. Of course, sometimes there'll be like doubt or there'll be worries, but I just keep writing. And a lot of it comes back to mutual friend Josh Malaman, because he's kind of like, well, so what? What if it kind of fails in your kind of arbitrary definition? It doesn't matter. There's another book. There's one after that. There's one after that. And, he'll reframe it rather than it being like, what if it fails? It's like, yeah, but what if it doesn't? And instead of, why would it be me? Why wouldn't it be me?
Yeah.
Seems to have worked out fairly well for him thus far.
Thus far, yes. He's a very positive man. A lot of people can learn a lot.
And, I mean, this isn't the Josh Malaman show, although it can at any point turn into it. But one thing that I find particularly remarkable at the moment is, he had the standout success of Bird Box that just absolutely blew everyone away. Then he got the film deal. And, you normally get one moment like that in your career. But then right now he's having it again with incidents around the house. And, if ever there was proof that you just have to keep going, I mean, it's not like his other books were not a success, but just to have kind of probably that's about 14 books later. There's a lot of books in between Bird Box and Incidents. So, I mean, with me, I think at the moment, The Girl in the Video has been my most popular in terms of sales, but it almost doesn't matter. It's like, because the next one that might exceed it, and eventually I'm pretty damn certain that there's going to be a book that's going to do a lot better than The Girl in the Video. So we just keep writing for those moments.
Yeah, I think as well, like when I was like starting out writing, I can't remember who I spoke to, but because I released Juniper like independently, they were like, I was just like, oh yeah, sales aren't doing that great. Like they soared originally and then they dropped off, and I was just like, I don't really know what to do. Like, how do I do this? And I think it was Salt Publishing actually. Like through my Storgy kind of days, I was like friends with quite a lot of publishers and stuff, and they said, look, don't worry about it, don't sweat it. Like, write more books, release more books, and then you'll see the sales go up because you'll have more for people to read. And I was just like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Like, why didn't I even think of that? Like, I was like, okay, yeah. Not that that's driven me to write loads of books, but I was just like, and then like now, like having like quite a large catalogue of books that are out there, like, yeah, they do riff off each other. And, some of the books I've written that I love, like, Harvesting Nightmare Fields that came out, like, I was kind of like, yeah, I love this book. This book's brilliant. But the sales haven't been very good. Like, but then I'm like, but I look at another book I wrote like last year or the year before, and that's got loads of sales. And then I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, maybe like it's just that you just have to have the material when people will find it, which is great if you're a prolific, but also encouragement for those that are only have one book or two books that keep writing, and other readers will find them as and when. And yeah, no book is ever dead, as they say. But, well, I don't know if as they say, like someone said that before. But
I mean, I would say it. You've said it here, so between us, they have said it. So there you go. And I mean, yeah, I heard people say before, the best marketing is writing the next book, which I think there's some truth to it. I mean, it depends how damn good your marketing campaigns are. But even if you're really good at marketing, well, maybe the second best marketing is writing the next book. And like we have said, like it is widely said, no book is ever dead. We don't know what it is that will make it take off. There might be a film adaptation. There might be that some massive writer or celebrity discovers that book. They put a post out about it on social media, and then suddenly, it's the next big thing. So, yeah, I truly believe that no book is ever dead. And something that I've kind of been saying a lot recently, which it's kind of so bizarre, but also understandable. Like a lot of us, falsely, we try to equate our success or the value of our art and our book to the commerce and the sales. And we're tempted to say, if it doesn't sell well, oh, well, that book was a failure. But the ridiculous thing is, when I finish a book, when I've put it out, whether it sells one copy or millions of copies, it's the same fucking book. So it's absurd to say, that the value changes based on the demand. Like, so, yeah, all of my books I'm tremendously proud of. Of course, I'd like all of them to sell more, wouldn't we all? But, to suggest that it's suddenly better written because, a million people now go out and buy it. It's just not true.
I think it's a dangerous game to like fall into, because I love every single book I've released, and I also find it quite difficult sometimes when people say, "Oh, what's your favorite book you've written?" Because they're all my favorites. But I think it can get dangerous when you start comparing, because Only the Stains Remain, I released that. It sold well to start with, but then I think last year or the year before, it just skyrocketed. I don't know what happened, who said it. It might have been an influencer online, but then that was selling like thousands of copies, and I was just like, "Whoa!" Like someone said something, but I don't know. I'm not really on like TikTok or anything anymore. But I don't know if it was from there or something. But it just the sales just rocketed, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I should start promoting this book more." And I was selling, and I was just like, "No, don't do that, because it's like you're cheating on your other books, Ross." I was just like, let's just keep it going. I try and promote all my books the same, and quite a lot of them with indies, so there's a lot of kind of legwork in promoting them. But I don't, like you said, if it sells one copy, I'm a happy man, because it's a book I've written and it's sold a copy. But if it sells 1,000 million, it's good as well. But it's as good as the last book.
Yeah, and I would say that I did ask you what is your favorite book. It's like, well, I'm being called out here, but I mean, for me, I do have one that I would say is my personal favorite of the ones that I've written. So I think we're allowed to have favorites. There are things that I like about all of them. So I wasn't meaning to put you on the spot in a kind of choose your favorite child, because we've seen how those films play out. It gets pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not like I'm offended by it, but it's just I really struggle, and also some days I like another book different than when you've asked me. I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I really like that book," and then 2 days later I'm like, "Oh yeah, but that book." It's just it's crazy, isn't it?
And so I want to kind of talk a little bit about the planning and the editing, because we've glossed over those elements a little bit. So first of all, I mean, you were telling us you plan quite a lot beforehand. So people who, again, they've been doing the maths in terms of this 3 books per year, it's like, well, how much of a plan do you have? And then, well, how long does that take? Is that one Friday to plan an entire book? Or do you allow yourself to plan not on Fridays because it's right? I guess it's writing tangential. Are you doing that between kind of social work? If you got a lunch break, you plan an idea down. Try not to confuse the caseworker notes with your story plan. It's like, whoa, no, give that one back. That's not what you want to read.
I think so. The planning wise, so basically, I won't start writing a book until I know the complete story for the book I'm going to write. Sometimes it's quite, because my head is a very busy place. So normally when I'm writing a book, I'll have 3 books in my head that aren't written, that are just kind of floating around, each fighting each other and just having a little war. And then one will eventually kind of just keep on coming into my thinking during the day or something like that. So then that will be the book that I will then start thinking about planning. Whilst I'm writing a book, I may, towards the end of the book, I may start planning the next book, just in my downtime. I use my phone quite a lot for notes, and then, because normally it comes to me either when I'm on my way to work or when I just get up in the morning, I'm like, oh yeah, that unlocks that bit. Okay, that's great. And then I put all my notes in my phone. I think with the last 3 books, I've had notes on my phone that basically would go from the beginning of the book to the end, and then because I don't know why I did it, because it's on my phone, but I'll write it all up in my little notebook, so it's all written down. And that kind of planning side normally takes around could be anywhere I died too, but they haven't buried me yet. Like I literally wrote that plan outline for that book in like 2 weeks, and that was just through notes on my phone and then having the 2 Fridays. Other books might take a bit longer. So Cradle of Glass that I just finished writing, that I planned that one for quite a while. It was a book I was writing, the story I love so much. I was like, I'm going to write this one to submit it to an agent. So I was like, I need to spend a bit more time in the planning of it. So that took, I'd say probably about 3 months to plan that one. But generally it's quite quick. Like what I tend to do, so I use kind of like a 5-act structure mostly. I change that quite a bit, and then what I do is I say, I've got a 5-act structure. The first act I want to have 4 chapters. So then each other act will have 4 chapters. So then I know how many chapters are in the whole book. I'll then jot down chapter 1, and then I will put down kind of like, normally my notes say something like killer first line, and then I'll be like killer first line, and then like I want to get to, and then I'll put down the kind of like end bit of the chapter, and then I'll make up the rest when I actually write. And then like chapter 2, and I'll go all the way up, and I'll have like inciting incident, turning the screw, like conclusion or whatever, and I'll just work my way through it and jot down every single chapter, how I'm going to get there. And then I'll I'll spend a few hours working on characters, names, ages, what they look like, how old, like what they do for jobs. Like I go really deep dive, like, what their hobbies are and all that. Even if it doesn't come up, I've got it written down. And then, sometimes I might pull some images off the internet just to kind of like landscapes or things I'm not quite sure about. I did a lot of that with the Western because it's set in Nebraska. So like that is the book that I spent the most time researching. I must have researched for about 6 months. I joined the Nebraskan Historical Society because it's set in Nebraska. Like they sent me like maps of the time that I was writing in. They sent me town layouts for all the towns that I kind of like picked that they were going to go on this journey to. They sent me like the maps. Like I didn't even know they existed at that point, but it was like every single building in the town was written down, like which ones were water, like how all these. So I had all of that. So like that's like, it was crazy the amount of research that went on in that one. But I wanted it was my kind of like, this is the book, Ross. Like the book. So I spent about 6 months planning that one. But yeah, that's kind of it really. Like I try to research a bit, and more so on books that I do in America, or American like kind of language and things like that, because I want to make sure it's right and not me just guessing like animals that are in a certain place in America. I don't know. But I try to do when I'm writing in America, I try to do a lot more research just so I get it right. The one set in like England, I'm just like, I know that. Like I try to write from places that I know as well. So when I'm writing them, I'm kind of like, I've been there. I know what that landscape's like. It's like this.
Thank you so much for listening to Ross Jeffery on This Is Horror. To support the show and to hear the next episode ahead of the crowd, become a patron at patreon.com/This Is Horror. I'm hoping to do This Is Horror full time by the end of the year. And the best way for you to help me make that a reality is to join Patreon. And in a matter of days, you will get to hear our Story Unboxed episode, in which we analyse the Australian horror Talk to Me and deliver writing lessons to help you make your stories better. So, if that sounds good, do join us at patreon.com/This Is Horror. Okay, before I wrap up, a quick advert break.
From the host of This Is Horror podcast comes a dark thriller of obsession, paranoia, and voyeurism. After relocating to a small coastal town, Brian discovers a hole that gazes into his neighbor's bedroom. Every night she dances and he peeps. Same song, same time, same wild and mesmerizing dance. But soon Brian suspects he's not the only one watching, and she's not the only one being watched. They're watching is The Wicker Man meets Body Double with a splash of Suspiria. They're Watching by Michael David Wilson and Bob Pastorella is available from thisishorror.co.uk, Amazon, and wherever good books are sold.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This Is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio.
Now, I just wanted to thank everyone who has read Daddy's Boy. And I also wanted to thank those of you who have left a review. The audiobook narrated by Josh Curran is now available on all platforms, including Audible, so do pick it up with your Audible credit if you can. And speaking of support and reviews, thank you to Curtis, who left a 5-star review for Daddy's Boy and had this to say over on Goodreads. That book was totally unhinged. It felt like Jeff Strand if he really got into British comedy. I will never forget my adventures with Shitter Brick Rick. Thank you so much, Curtis, and hopefully there will be more adventures with the likes of Shitter Brick Rick in the future. If enough people buy Daddy's Boy, then I can deliver a Daddy's Boy too, if that is what the people want. So, vote with your wallet and show your support on platforms such as Goodreads. That about does it for another episode of This Is Horror. So until next time, for part 2 with Ross Jeffery, take care of yourselves, be good to one another, read horror, keep on writing, and have a great day.
This is Horror Podcast.